One of the hardest things to heal from is a wound that never received honesty, apology, or closure. What if the reason you still feel stuck is not because you are weak, not because you are broken, not because you are unwilling to heal, but because part of your heart is still waiting, waiting for the apology, waiting for the explanation, waiting for the moment someone finally admits what they did, waiting for them to see your pain, waiting for them to say, "You were right. You did not deserve that. I was wrong." Because sometimes the hardest thing to grieve is not only what happened, it is the ending you never got, the conversation that never came, the accountability that never happened, the closure you hoped would finally help your heart rest. And if that is where you are right now, if part of you is still emotionally standing in the doorway of an old wound, hoping one day it will all make sense, this message is for you. You do not have to force your healing here. You do not have to pretend that what happened did not matter. You do not have to rush the ache away. But maybe, gently, you are being invited into a new truth that you can move forward without their closure. And stay with me until the end, because if this message speaks to your heart, I want to guide you to the next step in this healing journey. What happens after you outgrow your old life? Not all pain lingers because it was too deep to survive. Some pain lingers because nothing was ever made right. No repair, no apology, no changed behavior, no acknowledgement, no honest ending. And that can be one of the most painful kinds of hurt. Because when something breaks and no one takes responsibility for it, your heart keeps circling the wound, trying to understand it, trying to make sense of it, trying to find the missing piece that will finally let you breathe. You replay what happened. You revisit what was said. You imagine what you wish they would say now. You rehearse the conversation that never came. And all of that can feel so consuming because your heart is not only holding pain. It is holding unfinished pain without resolution, without repair, without the dignity of being fully seen. And beloved, that hurts because there is something in all of us that longs for what is fair, for truth to be spoken, for wrong to be named, for what was broken to be honored with honesty. So, if part of you still aches for closure, that does not make you dramatic. It makes you human. This is where it gets tender. Because the very thing you are waiting for to set you free can quietly become the thing that keeps you bound. You tell yourself, when they finally explain it, then I can move on. When they finally apologize, then I can rest. When they finally understand what they did, then this won't hurt so much. And while that longing is deeply understandable, it can also keep your healing tied to someone else's awareness, someone else's maturity, someone else's honesty, someone else's willingness to face what they did. And that is a painful place to live because some people will never give you what they owed you. Not because you did not deserve it, but because they are not willing, not able, or not honest enough to meet the truth. And if your healing waits for their clarity, their repentance, their insight, or their apology, your peace remains in their hands. That is too much power to leave with someone who already mishandled your heart. Gentle rebuilding asks a hard question. What if the door you keep waiting on is never going to open? And what if your life still deserves to move forward? Let's tell the truth here. Closure is beautiful when it comes. A sincere apology matters. Honest accountability matters. Being seen matters. Repair matters. But closure is not always available. Some people avoid truth. Some people rewrite history. Some people defend themselves instead of listening. Some people protect their image instead of honoring your pain. And some people simply do not have the capacity to meet you where the wound was made. That does not mean your pain is invalid. It means closure is not always mutual. Sometimes the clean ending you deserved never arrives. And when it does not, you are left with a choice, not a fair choice, not an easy choice, but a real one. Will I keep waiting for what may never come? Or will I begin healing with the truth I already have? Because you may never get the apology that fits the wound. You may never get the explanation that makes it make sense. You may never get the confession that validates what your spirit already knows. And that is heartbreaking. But your life still matters. Your peace still matters. Your future still matters. Your healing still matters, even if the ending was incomplete. This is so important. Moving forward without their closure does not mean pretending it did not hurt. It does not mean minimizing what happened. It does not mean calling it okay when it was not okay. It does not mean denying your grief or making excuses for what wounded you. No. Healing is not pretending. Healing is telling the truth without letting the truth chain you forever. It is saying, yes, this mattered. Yes, this hurt me. Yes, I deserved better. Yes, I may never get what should have been given. And still, I do not want to stay here forever. That is not denial. That is courage. Because some people think if they stop waiting for closure, they are letting the person off the hook. But that is not what healing is. Healing is not excusing them. Healing is releasing your future from being held hostage by their unwillingness. You are not saying, it did not matter. You are saying, it mattered, and I will not let it keep deciding the rest of my life. That is sacred strength. There is a difference between honoring your pain and living under its authority forever. Honoring your pain means listening to it, naming it, making space for what it taught you, grieving what was lost, respecting the wound instead of rushing past it. But staying chained to it looks different. It looks like emotional paralysis. It looks like living in the replay. It looks like measuring your healing by whether the other person finally gets it. It looks like postponing your peace until someone else becomes honest. And beloved, you do not need their permission to begin becoming whole. You do not need their apology to start breathing again. You do not need their explanation to begin trusting your own reality. You do not need their acknowledgement to know that what happened mattered. Part of gentle rebuilding is learning to say, I can carry the truth without carrying the hope that they will one day become who I needed them to be. That is a hard grief, because sometimes what you are really releasing is not just the need for closure. It is the hope that they will finally become safe, finally become honest, finally become different. And letting go of that hope can feel like its own heartbreak. But sometimes, heartbreak is what opens the door to freedom. Some people think healing without closure means you settled. It does not. Some people think moving on without an apology means you accepted less than you deserved. It does not. Sometimes moving forward without closure is one of the strongest things a person can do, because it means you stopped making your future dependent on someone else's awakening. It means you stopped building your peace around what they may never understand. It means you chose to return your energy to your own life, to your own growth, to your own healing, to your own becoming. And that is not weakness. That is wisdom. It is the wisdom to stop waiting at doors that may never open. It is the wisdom to stop starving for what another person refuses to give. It is the wisdom to say, I deserved better. I may never receive it from them, but I am still allowed to become free. That is powerful. That is holy. And for many women, that is the turning point. The moment they stop asking, why didn't I get the closure I deserved? And start asking, what would healing look like if I stopped waiting for it? So, what does this actually look like? It looks like telling yourself the truth, even when no one else confirms it. It looks like no longer needing one more conversation to validate what your soul already knows. It looks like grieving what never happened, instead of endlessly waiting for it. It looks like releasing the fantasy of the perfect ending. It looks like choosing not to go back for one more explanation that will only reopen the wound. It looks like saying, I may never understand everything, but I understand enough to stop staying here. It looks like protecting your peace instead of chasing one more resolution. It looks like trusting that an unanswered ending does not mean your life cannot move forward. Sometimes moving forward is not loud. Sometimes it looks like quiet honesty, like a woman who stops checking for signs the other person has changed, like a woman who stops rehearsing what she wishes she could say, like a woman who stops standing in the doorway of the past and slowly turns toward her own life again. That is what rebuilding can look like. Not revenge, not denial, not pretending, just release. Can I ask you something gently? What are you still waiting for that may never come? The apology? The explanation? The acknowledgement? The changed person? The fair ending? And what has it been costing you to keep waiting? Your peace? Your softness? Your energy? Your ability to fully live here and now? What would it feel like to stop asking that unfinished story, to finally become something it may never become? What if healing is not found in one last answer, but in finally letting yourself walk away from the question? Do not rush the answer. Let it sit, because sometimes freedom begins when you stop waiting for someone else's truth and start honoring your own. And this is where the next part of healing begins. Because once you stop waiting for the closure you deserved, another question rises. What now? What happens when you finally stop standing at the doorway of an old wound? What happens when you stop waiting for the apology, the explanation, or the ending that never came? You begin to outgrow the life that kept you emotionally tied to the past. And that is the next part of this journey. If this message is speaking to your heart today, say this quietly with me. I do not need their closure to keep healing. I do not need their apology to begin becoming whole. I honor what happened. I honor what it cost me. I honor what I deserved. And I release the weight for what may never come. I am allowed to move forward. I am allowed to protect my peace. I am allowed to heal with the truth I already have. I am becoming free. If this message found you today, let this be your reminder. You may never get the ending you deserved. You may never hear the words your heart longed for. You may never receive the apology that would have made the wound feel seen. And that is deeply sad. But it is not the end of your story. Your healing does not have to wait for their awareness. Your peace does not have to wait for their honesty. And your future does not have to stay paused because someone else never gave you closure. Gentle rebuilding means you can carry the truth without staying chained to the unfinished ending. You can grieve it, honor it, release it, and slowly, sacredly move forward anyway. If this message spoke to your heart, write this in the comments. I do not need their closure to keep healing. And when this video ends, watch Next, what happens after you outgrow your old life? Because once you stop waiting for the closure you deserve, the next step in healing is learning to trust the voice, the wisdom, and the peace that still remain within you. Subscribe to Dream Life Diaries and keep walking this gentle rebuilding journey with us. You are not behind. You are not weak. And you do not have to stay stuck waiting for an ending that may never come. Remember this: your healing does not have to wait for the apology you deserved.